A simple lullaby could once get you killed. Throughout medieval history, ruling dynasties systematically banned minority languages to crush cultural identity and consolidate their power. This is the story of 24 secret underground choirs who fought back with nothing but their voices. By the end of this journey, you will know exactly how these communities used coded harmonies to save their mother tongues from extinction. How did a song preserve an entire language, and what ingenious methods kept these musical conspiracies hidden for centuries? What would you risk to save the sound of home from being silenced forever? Language was the ultimate weapon of the medieval state. Across continents and cultures, a familiar pattern emerged, where a new dynasty's first act of power was to mandate a single, official tongue. This was not just about administrative efficiency, it was a deliberate campaign to dismantle the very soul of a people. Imagine a world where the stories your grandmother told you, the songs you sang at harvest, the very words you used to pray, were suddenly declared illegal. This was the reality for countless communities from the Holy Roman Empire to the Ming Dynasty. Rulers understood that a shared language builds unity, but a forbidden language forges resistance. The Ottoman sultans, for example, systematically suppressed Armenian and Greek, elevating Turkish to the sole language of court and commerce. In France, the monarchy waged a long war against Occitan, the vibrant language of the South, aiming to replace it with the Parisian dialect. These were not mere policy changes, they were profound acts of cultural erasure. Official documents, school lessons, even public market transactions were forced into the new tongue, creating a world where your native language became a liability. This created a desperate void, a silence that threatened to swallow entire histories. But oppression often breeds the most ingenious forms of defiance. When a language is banished from the light of day, it finds refuge in the shadows, setting the stage for a silent war fought not with swords but with song. These hidden choirs were intricate machines of preservation, built for survival. At their core, they were living libraries where the knowledge of a forbidden language was passed from one generation to the next through the safety of song. Elders, the keepers of the old tongue, would sit with young learners, not with dusty books that could be seized as evidence, but with melodies. They wove complex vocabulary and the subtle rules of grammar into the verses of hymns and traditional folk tunes. A simple song about the harvest moon could secretly teach verb conjugations, while a lullaby might hide the unique syntax of a poetic form. The entire structure was meticulously organized to minimize risk. Each member had a vital role. Composers acted as linguists, carefully crafting new lyrics that expanded the usable vocabulary within the band language. Messengers, often appearing as simple travelers or merchants, would distribute these new compositions on sheets of music that looked like common religious psalms or harmless love ballads to any prying eyes. Finding a safe space to sing was a constant challenge. Meetings were held in remote caves where sound would be swallowed by stone, in deep forest clearings far from patrols, or even in crypts beneath churches where the sanctioned hymns sung above would mask the forbidden ones below. They developed elaborate systems of security, using specific bird calls as signals or fragments of approved prayers as passwords to gain entry. The music itself was a masterpiece of deception. To an outsider or a soldier of the ruling power, it sounded perfectly acceptable, perhaps a somber religious chant or a cheerful celebratory tune for a public holiday. But to the initiated, the same song was a dense lesson, its rhythm and repetition designed to cement the sound and structure of their mother tongue into memory. This brilliant duality made every gathering both a spiritual comfort and a covert classroom. It was here, in the shadows, that creativity and raw courage fused into a single, silent act of defiance. The rugged hills of Brittany became the first fortress for a forbidden tongue, as the French crown tightened its grip, demanding all official business be conducted in its own language. A quiet rebellion took root in the dark. They called themselves the Breton Nightingales, and their song was an act of preservation. These singers chose their stages with care, gathering in ancient stone circles under a blanket of stars. The standing stones acted as a natural amphitheater, amplifying their voices for each other while containing the sound from any distant patrols. Their songbook was a secret curriculum. Epic ballads that spun tales of long-dead Breton kings and mythical heroes were not merely entertainment. Every verse was a meticulously crafted lesson, its rhythm and rhyme designed to embed complex grammatical rules and archaic vocabulary deep into the memory of every listener. The very leaders of this choir were often the last of a dying breed, bards who had once performed in public squares before the monarchy's decree forced them into hiding. Their expertise was now poured into this clandestine effort to coordinate their complex harmonies without a spoken word that might carry on the wind. The Nightingales developed an elegant system of hand signals. A subtle gesture could cue a shift in pitch or signal the start of a new verse. This silent language became their lifeline, allowing them to melt back into the shadows in an instant if a lookout signaled danger. It was this combination of artistic brilliance and tactical cunning that allowed the Breton language to breathe in the darkness for centuries. The survival of their Celtic tongue against overwhelming pressure stands as a powerful testament to what a determined community can protect through the simple, profound act of raising their voices together. While the Breton Nightingales sang under the stars, another melody of defiance rose from the valleys of Wales. The English conquest had imposed a new reality, where the Welsh language was stripped from its courts and its churches. But in response, the people forged a shield from the very thing their rulers could not fully suppress, the sound of communal song. They called these gatherings Saiman for Ganu, and to the outside eye they appeared as simple, pious hymn-singing festivals. In truth, they were a nationwide conspiracy to save a mother tongue. These events were meticulously orchestrated, transforming entire congregations into a single, powerful instrument of linguistic preservation. Participants did not just sing, they practiced and perfected Welsh through intricate four-part harmonies. The complex interweaving of voices mirrored the complex structure of their own language, making every rehearsal a deep, immersive lesson. The music itself was the key to their code. They sang metrical psalms and traditional carols composed in a strict poetic form known as sing-hained. This form, with its intricate patterns of alliteration and internal rhyme, was a perfect vessel for encoding the fundamental rules of Welsh grammar and a rich, evolving vocabulary. To learn the song was to learn the language itself, its rhythm and sound etched into memory through repetition. The leaders of this resistance were often dissident clerics, men who traveled between remote villages under the perfectly legitimate guise of religious duties. Their saddlebags carried not just Bibles but new musical compositions. These sheets of music, filled with notes and lyrics, were actually linguistic updates, distributing fresh vocabulary and poetic forms to a network of eager choirs. The authorities often grew suspicious, sensing the undercurrent of rebellion in these powerful singing festivals. Yet they faced a dilemma. The music was so deeply woven into the fabric of Welsh cultural and religious life that to ban it outright risked igniting the very widespread rebellion they sought to avoid. This brilliant strategic ambiguity gave the Saiman for Ganu the space it needed to operate in plain sight. The echoes of those harmonies never truly faded. They nurtured the Welsh language through its darkest hours, allowing it to flourish in the shadows until it could one day re-emerge stronger than ever as a living language with official status. It stands as a profound lesson in how artistic expression, when wielded with courage, can become the most formidable tool of preservation. Far to the south, in the sun-drenched hills of Occitania, a different kind of musical conspiracy was taking shape. Here, the French crown was methodically crushing the Languedoc, the vibrant tongue of the south, but the troubadours, the region's legendary poet-musicians, refused to let their songs be silenced. Once the stars of royal courts, they now became masters of a covert operation for linguistic survival. Their grand performances moved from castle halls to hidden courtyards and the quiet cloisters of secluded monasteries. To any casual listener, their compositions sounded like the height of romantic artistry, filled with tales of chivalric love and longing. Yet every song was a meticulously crafted lesson. Their canzos and servants were saturated with rich Occitan vocabulary, and they perfected a system of allegory where each stanza held a hidden meaning. A line praising a lady's beauty might secretly illustrate a complex verb tense, while a metaphor about a distant castle could encode the rules of a unique grammatical case. This required the listeners to be active participants, to listen not just for the melody, but for the mother tongue woven within it. The troubadours themselves became shadows of their former public selves. They traveled in clever disguises, posing as simple minstrels singing approved French tunes or as merchants hawking their wares. This guise allowed them to move between isolated villages, connecting a scattered network of resistance. They carried their new compositions not on parchment, which was dangerous evidence, but in their memories. They established a chain of human transmission, a series of listening posts where trusted individuals would memorize a song perfectly before passing it on to the next link. This oral network ensured the language spread without a single written word that could be confiscated and used against them. The legacy of their defiance echoes far beyond those hidden courtyards. The very musical structures and poetic forms they perfected while fighting for their language went on to influence musical traditions across Europe. In their story, we see a profound truth that the fight to preserve culture can sometimes create new forms of beauty, and that the most elegant resistance is often sung. The haunting sound of unaccompanied voices still echoes through the remote glens of the Scottish Highlands. After the Statutes of Iona systematically dismantled the power of Gaelic chieftains and sought to erase their culture, the people's devotion found a new, clandestine purpose. In hidden sea caves and secluded valleys, where the wind and waves masked their gatherings, communities transformed their religious faith into a shield for their mother tongue. These Gaelic psalmists turned worship into a covert act of linguistic preservation. Their chosen form of music was a perfect vessel for this secret work. The tradition of Gaelic psalmody is sung without any instrument, following a precentor who leads with a slow, free rhythm line. This seemingly simple style held a powerful secret. The slow pace and elaborate vocal ornamentation were not just for beauty, they were a deliberate teaching tool. Singers used intricate melodic flourishes to emphasize specific phonetic sounds and grammatical patterns found only in Gaelic, training the ear and the voice in the unique cadence of their forbidden language. Every psalm was carefully selected for its linguistic value. Leaders would choose texts rich in complex vocabulary, and in the solemn pauses between each line, they would quietly explain the meaning and correct pronunciation to the younger members huddled close. This transformed each spiritual meeting into an immersive language lesson, where the sacred words served a dual purpose, connecting the community to their faith while secretly anchoring them to their heritage. But these choirs were more than just classrooms, they were living archives. Certain families were entrusted with a sacred duty to memorize specific historical narratives and genealogies that were woven directly into the songs. These were not written down, for written Gaelic materials were being actively sought and destroyed. Instead, vast swaths of history, lore, and legend were preserved in the collective memory of the singers, passed from one generation to the next with meticulous oral accuracy. The survival of the Gaelic language through its darkest centuries is a testament to this profound dedication. It demonstrates how deeply culture can embed itself within the rituals of faith, creating a sanctuary so strong that not even the full force of a ruling state could silence its song. The rhythmic clang of a hammer on an anvil can sound like simple labor, but in the Basque country, it became a secret language lesson. Under the watch of Spanish and French authorities who had outlawed the ancient Euskara language, the blacksmiths known as Erasure opened their forges after dark. The very nature of their craft provided the perfect disguise. The roar of the bellows and the constant, percussive strike of metal against metal created a sonic shield, drowning out the forbidden words of their songs from any prying ears outside. Inside these glowing workshops, the air thick with heat and the smell of coal, a different kind of metal was being forged, the unbreakable chain of linguistic heritage. Their repertoire was not random. They focused intently on work chants that described the process of mining ore and shaping tools, and on epic mythological poems about Basque deities and heroes. Every song was a practical lexicon, packed with essential vocabulary for nature, family ties, and the routines of daily life. This ensured that the language they preserved was not a relic, but a living, breathing tool for communication. The Aromanians even invented a unique teaching method, a coded percussion language. They discovered that by striking different parts of the anvil with their hammers, they could produce distinct tones. They mapped these tones to the specific rhythms and intonations of Euskara, creating a multisensory learning experience where the sound and feel of the language were literally hammered into memory. This physical connection made the lessons unforgettable, but their most brilliant innovation was the incorporation of bertsolaritza, the demanding Basque tradition of improvised poetry. During these sessions, a senior smith would set a theme, and the others would have to compose spontaneous verses in Euskara on the spot, all while maintaining a complex rhyme scheme. This was not mere rote memorization. It was a vibrant exercise that kept the language fluid, creative, and adaptable to new ideas and situations, proving it was as malleable as the hot iron on their anvils. The forge, a place of ordinary work, was transformed into a powerhouse of cultural defiance, demonstrating that the tools for survival are often hidden in plain sight. Deep beneath the earth, in the labyrinthine tunnels of Cornwall's tin mines, the very rock seemed to sing a forbidden song. The English crown had declared the Cornish language dead, but the miners, their lungs filled with dust and their hearts with defiance, gave it a secret life. They became the carolers of the tin mines, turning the oppressive darkness into their sanctuary. Their stage was a network of echoing shafts and caverns, where the natural acoustics amplified their voices for each other while trapping the sound from the world above. They chose their moment with brilliant cunning, focusing their efforts on the Christmas season. To any official who might venture below, the sounds of caroling were just a harmless, even commendable, celebration of a universal holiday. They never suspected that every festive note was a carefully constructed lesson in a banned tongue. The miners composed original carols and adapted traditional ones, weaving complex Cornish vocabulary and grammatical structures into the joyful lyrics. A song about a guiding star might secretly teach the unique sentence structure of their mother tongue, while a hymn about peace on earth could be packed with words for family and home. They mastered musical forms that turned the mind's echoes into a teaching tool. By singing in intricate rounds and canons, where one voice begins a melody and others follow in a staggered pattern, they created a powerful, repetitive echo chamber. This constant reinforcement hammered the sound and rhythm of Cornish deep into their memories, making the language impossible to forget. Their security was as sophisticated as their song. They developed a miner's code, a simple yet effective system of communication using their hammers. Specific sequences of taps on the rock walls would travel clearly through the stone, signaling the all clear for a practice to begin, or, more crucially, a warning that company officials or crown agents were descending. This early alert system was their lifeline. Upon hearing the coded taps, the choir could, in an instant, seamlessly switch from a Cornish carol to a well-known English hymn. By the time an outsider arrived, they would find only a group of pious miners honoring the season, their true purpose perfectly concealed. This story reveals a profound truth, that the most effective resistance is often hidden in the most ordinary of places. The Cornish miners did not need a fortress, they had a mine shaft. They did not need weapons, they had their voices. They transformed a place of back-breaking labor into a cradle for their culture, proving that even in the deepest darkness, a language can find a way to shine. The haunting wail of the Lornaders echoed through Sardinia's mountains, a sound that was far more than music. As foreign rulers from Pisa to Aragon tried to erase the island's native tongue, these ancient triple pipe instruments became the heart of a sophisticated linguistic rebellion. Musicians formed clandestine circles, retreating to concealed stone shelters known as panettas, where the rugged terrain itself helped guard their secret. Their craft was a beautiful deception, a public performance of folk tradition that privately served as an intricate language preservation machine. At the core of their method was a brilliant code, where different pipe configurations and fingerings did not just produce notes, they represented specific linguistic elements. A particular arrangement of the three pipes could signal a verb tense, while a complex sequence of ornamentation might encode a set of grammatical rules. The musicians learned to speak through their instruments, articulating the very structure of Sardinian without uttering a single, potentially treasonous word. The singers in the circle then gave voice to this instrumental code, their harmonies providing the lyrical content that filled in the vocabulary. Their repertoire was carefully curated, drawing heavily on epic poems that recounted the deeds of Sardinia's ancient Nuragic civilization. A song about the mysterious stone towers built by their ancestors was not just a history lesson, it was a vessel packed with archaic terms and complex sentence structures, reinforcing cultural identity and language in a single, powerful act. Gaining access to this knowledge required absolute trust. The circles operated on a strict hierarchy of membership. A new initiate, drawn from a trusted family, would first be tested on their musical skill alone, required to master the basic melodies. Only after proving their loyalty and discretion through a series of increasingly difficult musical trials would they be gradually introduced to the coded linguistic meanings behind the notes. This slow, deliberate process ensured that the most guarded secrets of the Sardinian language were never exposed to betrayal. This fusion of artistic specialization and covert purpose yielded remarkable results. The Lornaders circles were so effective that they managed to preserve distinct dialects across the island's isolated regions, allowing the Sardinian language to withstand multiple waves of foreign domination. Their story stands as a powerful testament to how a community can weaponize its own artistic heritage, turning melody into memory and ensuring the soul of a culture resonates long after the music fades. Out on the open water, the Frisian language found its refuge in the roar of the North Sea. Dutch and German authorities had pushed the native tongue ashore, but they could not control what was sung beyond the breakers. Fishermen transformed their working vessels into floating classrooms, their labor into a linguistic lifeline. These shantymen turned the daily grind of hauling nets and setting sail into a covert operation for cultural survival. The constant crash of waves against the hull and the howling wind provided a perfect natural sound barrier, masking their forbidden harmonies from any informant watching from the distant coastline. Their songs were far more than rhythmic work aids. Each shanty was meticulously crafted, packed with precise Frisian nautical terms for ropes, sails, and weather patterns, and built upon the unique grammatical structures of their mother tongue. A simple chanty about mending nets could secretly drill complex verb conjugations, while a song about navigating by the stars might embed an entire vocabulary list for celestial bodies. The call and response format was their genius. The lead shantyman would sing out a line in clear, crisp Frisian, and the entire crew was required to answer not just with the same words, but with the correct grammatical variation. If he sang a singular noun, they had to respond with its plural form. If he used a verb in the present tense, their answer had to shift it to the past. This constant, active participation forged a deep, intuitive understanding of the language's rules, transforming every fishing expedition into a dynamic, immersive lesson. Coordination was silent and seamless. They developed a system of flag signals hoisted in the rigging to indicate when a language session would begin, invisible to anyone not aboard. Specific knot patterns tied onto the rails served as memory aids, each complex twist representing a different phonetic sound or grammatical rule to be practiced that day. This maritime method did more than preserve vocabulary. It built an unbreakable camaraderie. Each successful call and response strengthened their collective identity, weaving the survival of their language directly into the shared struggle and triumph of their livelihood. The Frisian shantymen proved that a culture under threat does not need to retreat. It can simply set sail, using the very tools of its daily life as instruments of eternal defiance. Behind the towering stone walls of a monastery, the quiet hum of devotion masked a brilliant linguistic conspiracy. In a time when the Crown of Aragon sought to restrict the Catalan language, the very heart of religious life became its secret stronghold. Monastic communities established clandestine choirs, turning their cloisters into fortresses of cultural preservation. To any visiting official or bishop, these gatherings were simply monks fulfilling their sacred duties, their voices raised in approved Gregorian chant during the scheduled canonical hours. But within those ancient melodies lay a carefully coded rebellion. The singers composed intricate chants that followed the strict form of Latin liturgy, yet they wove the vocabulary and complex syntax of the Catalan language directly into the sacred text. A hymn to the Virgin Mary might seamlessly integrate the distinct sounds of their mother tongue, training the ear and the memory in its forbidden rhythms. The true genius of their system lay in the music itself, in the elegant neumes scribed onto parchment. This medieval musical notation was more than a guide for pitch, it was a secret map. The monks developed a sophisticated set of hidden markers within the neumes, tiny flourishes and subtle alterations invisible to the uninitiated. A small curl on a note might indicate where a Latin word should be swapped for its Catalan equivalent during performance, while a barely perceptible dot could signal an entire phrase to be sung in the vernacular. This allowed the same sheet of music to appear perfectly orthodox, while guiding the singers through a covert linguistic exercise every time they raised their voices. They selected their practice spaces with the precision of master architects, specific chambers within the cloister, chosen for their exceptional and focused acoustics, would amplify the sound of their singing only within the enclosed courtyard, preventing the distinct Catalan phrases from carrying beyond the monastery grounds. The stone itself became their ally, containing their secret within a sanctuary of sound, and their preservation efforts were not limited to the auditory. In the scriptorium, monks toiled over stunning illuminated manuscripts. To a casual observer, these were magnificent religious texts, but under the angled light of a single candle at a particular time of day, hidden Catalan phrases would emerge from the intricate illustrations. Words were woven into the folds of a saint's robe or hidden in the delicate tendrils of a painted vine, creating a silent, visual library to complement their sung one. This ecclesiastical approach reveals a profound duality: how devotion and cultural activism could coexist within the same sacred space. The monks were not just saving prayers, they were saving a people's connection to their own identity, using every tool their faith provided, from the music they sang to the pages they illuminated. Their story is a quiet testament to the fact that sometimes the most powerful resistance is not a shout, but a hymn, one that resonates through the ages long after the singers have fallen silent. High in the Swiss Alps, the mountains themselves became accomplices in a quiet rebellion. As German influence grew and the Romansh language was pushed to the margins, the people of these remote valleys discovered an ingenious use for their formidable landscape. They became the Alpine echo singers, turning the very peaks that isolated them into a vast, natural instrument for preservation. Their method was breathtakingly simple yet profoundly clever. A choir would split into two groups, positioning themselves on opposite slopes of a deep valley. When one group sang out a phrase, the natural reverberation would carry it across the chasm, and the second group would use the lingering echo as a foundation for their harmonic response. This created a continuous, overlapping cascade of sound, a musical conversation with the mountain itself, but this was far more than a beautiful folk tradition. It was a sophisticated linguistic exercise. The singers perfected a form of yodeling unique to Romansh, one that emphasized specific phonetic sounds and tonal shifts essential for understanding their language. A particular break in the voice, a leap from a chest tone to a high head tone, could differentiate between two otherwise similar sounding words, training the ear to hear the language's critical nuances. The content of their songs was deliberately chosen. They sang of herding sheep on high pastures, of the legends behind towering peaks, and of the spirits said to dwell in glacial streams. This ensured the vocabulary they practiced was not some archaic relic, but a living lexicon connected to their daily existence and deepest cultural beliefs. The structure of the echo was the ultimate teacher. The lead singers would call out a sentence fragment, and the responding choir, listening to the way the echo decayed across the valley, had to time their grammatical reply perfectly. A response that came too early or too late, or that did not match the required rhythmic pattern, was considered incorrect. This drilled the natural flow and complex sentence structure of Romansh into their collective memory, making correct grammar a matter of musical and environmental harmony. The challenging distance that kept them safe from prying ears also enforced a rigid discipline. They could not stop to verbally correct a mistake. The gap was too great. Every singer had to listen with intense focus and respond with precision, forging a self-correcting system where the mountain itself was the conductor. This was preservation woven into the fabric of the land, a testament to human ingenuity that used isolation not as a prison, but as a sanctuary for the sound of home. While the Alpine echoes faded into thin air, another forbidden melody took root deep within the forests of Lithuania. Under the heavy yoke of German and then Russian rule, the Lithuanian language was systematically outlawed, its public use a punishable offense. In response, village elders became the architects of a quiet rebellion, organizing secret Dainos circles in moonlit forest clearings and the warm, hay-scented darkness of barns. These were not mere singing groups, they were living libraries, and their primary text was the Sutartine, a stunningly complex form of polyphonic singing found nowhere else in the world. This unique musical structure, with its interwoven counterpoint and dissonant harmonies, became the perfect vessel for linguistic preservation. The intricate layering of voices, each following its own melodic path yet creating a cohesive whole, mirrored the complex grammatical patterns of the Lithuanian language itself. To learn the song was to internalize the very rhythm and syntax of their mother tongue. The content of these songs was deliberately grounded in the mundane magic of daily life. They sang of weaving, their voices mimicking the rhythmic clatter of the loom. They chanted while farming, their harmonies rising and falling with the swing of a scythe. They hummed during baking, the melody rising like the dough in the oven. Each activity was paired with a specific set of vocabulary, embedding words for tools, actions, and materials directly into the context of their use. This ensured the language they saved was not a museum piece, but a practical, living lexicon for the home and field. But the true genius of the Dainos keepers was their development of a silent, physical language to accompany the sung one. As they sang, their hands were never still. They developed a comprehensive system of symbolic gestures where a specific movement of the wrist might represent a grammatical case, and a flick of the fingers could indicate a verb conjugation. A closed fist could signify the past tense, while an open palm facing upward might denote the future. This created a powerful kinesthetic learning experience, connecting the sound of the words to a physical action, locking the language into memory through the body itself. This holistic system was then woven into the very fabric of the year. The elders meticulously aligned their secret rehearsals with the natural calendar. Specific songs were reserved for the spring planting, their lyrics filled with words for seeds and growth. A different set was sung during the harvest, rich with terms for reaping and abundance. The solstices and equinoxes became grand, covert linguistic festivals, where the entire community would gather to sing cycles of songs that reinforced the language through seasonal repetition. This connected the survival of Lithuanian to the eternal cycles of the earth, making it as natural and inevitable as the turning of the seasons. The language did not just survive in books, it lived on the breath of the people, in the movement of their hands, and in the soil they tended. It was a profound demonstration that when a culture is woven this deeply into the rituals of existence, no official decree can ever truly tear it out. The wind howling across the bogs of Connemara could not mask the intricate melodies rising from deep within the earth. As English law systematically stripped the Irish language from public life, a defiant sanctuary took shape in the most unexpected of places. Communities along the wild western coast descended into hidden underground chambers known as souterrains, ancient stone structures that became secret classrooms for a dying tongue. Here, the Sean-Nós sanctuary singers practiced their art, their unaccompanied voices weaving a shield of sound against cultural erasure. The souterrain itself was a perfect accomplice. Its cold, curved walls created a natural resonance chamber, amplifying the subtle nuances of each singer's performance, allowing every delicate vocal turn to be heard with absolute clarity. This was essential, for in Sean-Nós, or old-style singing, the devil was in the breathtaking detail. A single song could be a dense linguistic archive, its verses packed with archaic Irish vocabulary and complex grammatical structures seldom heard in everyday speech. A singer might spend an entire evening perfecting just a few lines, repeating them until the precise pronunciation and layered meaning were etched into memory. This was not a performance for an audience, it was a meticulous act of preservation, where artistic beauty and linguistic survival became one and the same. Their most ingenious innovation was a coded system of vocal ornamentation. The elaborate melodic flourishes that defined the Sean-Nós style were far more than decorative. Specific types of vocal turns, the delicate trills and subtle shifts in pitch, were assigned specific linguistic functions. A particular melodic variation might signal a change in verb tense, while another could indicate the grammatical case of a noun. To master the ornamentation was to internalize the very grammar of the Irish language, turning each musical session into a covert lesson in syntax. This knowledge was never entrusted to paper. The Sean-Nós singers maintained a strict oral tradition, viewing written records as a fatal vulnerability. Instead, they relied on a sophisticated web of mnemonic devices deeply connected to the Irish landscape. A singer memorizing a long, complex ballad would mentally attach each verse to a specific feature of the terrain: a standing stone on a hill, a bend in a river, the pattern of waves on a particular beach. To recall the song, they would take a mental walk through this personalized map, using the physical world as a prompt to unlock the linguistic treasure stored in their mind. This profound bond between language, music, and place created an unbreakable chain of cultural memory. The survival of Irish as a literary and spoken force against overwhelming odds is a powerful testament to this disciplined, deeply artistic form of defiance, proving that a culture can root itself so deeply in the land and the human voice that no law can ever truly rip it out. The sea itself became a clock for the Manx resistance. On the Isle of Man, where the English language had all but drowned out the native tongue, the fishing communities discovered a perfect, rhythmic ally in the ocean's tides. They formed the Fishermen's Corral, a group whose very existence was dictated by the lunar calendar, rehearsing in vast sea caves that were only accessible during the brief window of a retreating low tide. This natural scheduling ensured their voices were swallowed by the caverns and the returning sea, leaving no trace of their secret for the shore. Their music was drawn directly from the fabric of their daily labor. They perfected a call and response format built entirely on fishing commands, but these were no simple shouts. A lead singer would call out a complex phrase in Manx, a string of words describing a type of net or a method of navigation, and the responding chorus would answer not with a repetition, but with the correct grammatical transformation, turning a statement into a question or a singular command into a plural action. This constant, dynamic exchange drilled the living structure of their language into their minds, making every rehearsal a practical lesson in Manx syntax. They listened to the world around them with the ears of composers. The relentless crash and pull of waves on the cave entrance established the foundational rhythm for their songs, their voices rising and falling with the sea's own meter. To master the unique phonetic sounds of Manx, sounds that did not exist in English, they learned to imitate the sharp cries of gulls and the guttural calls of cormorants, weaving these animalistic syllables into their harmonies to practice difficult pronunciations. Their most ingenious invention, however, was a silent way to write their music. Since putting words to paper was an unimaginable risk, the fishermen developed a complex system of knot tying. Different knots tied in a specific order on a length of rope represented musical notes, rhythmic values, and even the rise and fall of the melody. A coiled line in a fisherman's bucket was not just cordage, it was a stored symphony, a complete new composition waiting to be decoded and sung into existence. This profound integration of work and worship, of livelihood and language, meant the survival of Manx was not a separate chore, but a natural part of their communion with the ocean. The language did not just survive in books, it was carried on the salt air and tied into the very ropes that held their livelihood, waiting for the tide to turn once more. The dense fog that blanketed the North Frisian marshes was not just weather, it was a weapon. While Danish and German authorities sought to dry up the local language, the people of the coast used the perpetual mist as a cloak for their defiance. They became the marsh singers, their voices rising and falling with the tide, their very practice space a shifting, ephemeral landscape that confounded any attempt at surveillance. Within this world of water and reeds, they developed a form of singing perfectly adapted to their environment, where the sounds of nature were not interruptions but essential parts of the composition. The croak of a frog became a percussive beat, the call of a curlew a melodic cue. By weaving these authentic wetland sounds into their harmonies, they created a living soundscape that masked their human presence, making their gatherings indistinguishable from the marsh's own chorus to any distant listener. Their songbook was written in the language of the land itself. They focused on work chants for dike building and land reclamation, processes vital to their survival. These songs were packed with specialized Frisian vocabulary for different types of mud, for the intricate patterns of wickerwork used in foundations, and for the precise stages of tidal flow. A song about piling sod was a practical lesson in nouns, while a chant about coordinating a work crew drilled complex imperative verb forms. This ensured the language they preserved was not abstract, but directly tied to the knowledge required to keep the sea at bay. Their most brilliant innovation was a system they called harmonic convergence. The choir would split into multiple vocal lines, each singing a different melodic phrase. At predetermined points in the music, these independent lines would converge, their voices meeting on a single, powerfully emphasized syllable or word. This moment of convergence was always reserved for a linguistically critical point, a difficult pronunciation unique to Frisian or a complex grammatical rule. The collective emphasis on that single sound, amplified by the combined force of the choir, hammered the correct form into every singer's memory. They even turned the water itself into a tool. Singing while standing in shallow, still pools, they discovered the reflective surface of the water acted as a natural amplifier and mixer. This allowed a large group to practice at a much lower volume while still hearing each other with perfect clarity. Their voices carried across the surface of the water rather than projecting upward into the open air where they might be detected. The marsh singers did not fight their environment, they partnered with it, transforming a landscape of challenge into a sanctuary of sound, proving that the very elements used to isolate a people can become the instruments of their cultural eternity. A mother's gentle hum could carry the weight of an entire culture. In the forests of Lusatia, where German states worked to erase the Sorbian language, the most potent act of defiance happened not in public squares, but in the quiet intimacy of a child's bedroom. Women organized clandestine lullaby circles, transforming the universal ritual of soothing a child into a sophisticated machine for linguistic survival. They gathered in remote farmhouses or hidden forest clearings, their voices a soft shield against the encroaching silence. The songs they chose were far from random. Traditional Sorbian cradle songs were their curriculum, each gentle melody packed with essential vocabulary for family members, household objects, and the natural world. A simple tune about the moon rising was a covert lesson in nouns, while a song about a sleeping animal taught verb conjugations, all disguised within the comforting rhythm of a mother's love. These women developed a brilliant system of melodic coding. They assigned specific musical intervals, the distance between two notes, to represent grammatical rules. A rising fourth might signal a verb in the future tense, while a descending minor third could indicate a possessive case. The very rhythm of the lullaby, its steady, rocking pulse, mirrored the natural cadence of a Sorbian sentence, training the infant ear and reinforcing the adult memory in the proper flow of their mother tongue. But their preservation efforts stretched beyond the waking world. They composed special dream songs, weaving rich threads of Sorbian mythology and folklore directly into the melodies. A lullaby might tell of the water spirit known as the vodnik, or the magical beings of the spree forest, ensuring that the child's first dreams were filled with the cultural narratives and archetypes that defined their heritage. This fusion of language and legend created a deep, subconscious bond with their identity. The entire structure was upheld by a powerful, unbroken matrilineal chain. Grandmothers, the revered custodians of the old ways, would teach the coded lullabies to their daughters, who in turn would whisper them to their own children. This direct mother-to-daughter transmission created a living library that required no vulnerable written records, its knowledge passed on through the warmth of a breath and the safety of a melody. This quiet, feminine form of resistance reveals a profound truth. While kings and parliaments made decrees in grand halls, the true battle for a culture's soul was often won in the most humble of spaces, in the soft darkness of a nursery, where a mother's song became an act of revolution. A dense canopy of pine needles created a perfect acoustic shield in the Kashubian forests. Here, where Polish and German influences had long pushed the local language to the brink, communities turned the woods themselves into a partner for their covert operations. The forest resonance singers understood that the very environment could be engineered to protect their secret. They chose their practice grounds with the precision of master strategists, seeking out the thickest stands of trees where the dense carpet of fallen needles and the layered branches above acted as a natural sound dampening chamber, swallowing their harmonies before they could travel far enough to alert any patrol. Their songbook was a direct reflection of their world. They sang hunting ballads that detailed the behavior of deer and boar, their lyrics packed with the specific Kashubian words for different trees, plants, and tracking techniques. Woodland tales about mythical forest spirits became vessels for complex verb structures and the unique syntax of their mother tongue. This ensured the language they preserved was not an abstract concept, but a living lexicon intrinsically tied to the land they walked every day. A song about following animal tracks could secretly teach the intricacies of past tense conjugation, while a melody describing the phases of the moon might embed an entire vocabulary list for nocturnal creatures. Their most ingenious technique, however, was their mastery of resonance singing. Over generations, they had mapped the acoustic properties of their forest. They identified specific types of trees, often ancient, broad-trunked pines, that naturally amplified certain vocal frequencies. A singer assigned the melody would stand before one such tree, their voice gaining clarity and projection from the wood itself. Another, singing the harmony, would find a different tree a short distance away that best carried their specific vocal range. This transformed the grove into a living, breathing sound system, where each tree acted as a natural speaker for its designated vocal part, creating a rich, immersive soundscape that was brilliantly clear to the singers but remained frustratingly muffled and directionless to anyone outside their circle. Communication and coordination were handled with a silent language written in the forest floor. They developed an intricate system of markers using arrangements of stones and carefully broken branches. A particular pattern of crossed twigs might point the way to the next meeting spot, while a small, deliberate pile of stones could contain a hidden lesson. The number of stones might indicate a specific grammatical rule to be practiced that day, and their arrangement could signal which set of vocabulary, perhaps words for weather or family, would be the focus of their songs. This sylvan code allowed them to operate without ever needing to speak a word aloud until they were safely gathered in their chosen acoustic sanctuary. The Kashubian forests were more than a hiding place. They were an active participant in the preservation of a culture, proving that when a people know their land intimately, they can forge from it an unbreakable shield for the sound of home. 17th on our journey takes us high into the Balkan Mountains, where the very air seemed to carry a secret. For the Aromanian shepherds, their entire way of life became a moving fortress for their endangered Romance language. Ottoman and Greek authorities controlled the towns and valleys, but they could not follow the ancient transhumance routes that wound through the most isolated peaks. As flocks moved with the seasons, the shepherds moved with them, and their language moved too, preserved in a unique pastoral symphony. Their harmonic groups turned the daily routine of tending sheep into a continuous linguistic workshop. The sounds of their environment were not background noise, they were essential instruments. The rhythmic bleating of the flock established a beat, while the distant cry of an eagle might signal a key change. Within this natural orchestra, they wove dense Aromanian vocabulary for plants, weather, and family into their polyphonic songs, ensuring the language described their immediate reality with perfect precision. Their most brilliant innovation was a teaching method they called echo mapping. A lead singer would face a specific cliff face known for its distinct acoustic properties and sing a phrase. The rock would send back a distorted version of the melody, sometimes smearing the syllables or altering the rhythm. The responding singers then had the challenge of correcting the echo, of singing the phrase back with the proper pronunciation and grammatical structure. This turned the mountain itself into a strict, unforgiving teacher, drilling the correct linguistic forms through constant, real-time correction. But their preservation was not only in the air, it was also in the earth. As they sang, the shepherds used their long wooden staffs to tap out intricate rhythmic patterns in the soil. These were not random beats. Each pattern served as a physical mnemonic device, a code written in the dirt that represented a different complex grammatical rule. A specific sequence of taps might correspond to a particular verb conjugation, while another pattern could map the declension of a noun. After the practice, a sweep of a foot would erase the evidence, leaving no trace for any outsider who might stumble upon their remote pasture. This nomadic approach created a living, breathing library that roamed the highlands. The language was not stored in a fixed location where it could be found and destroyed, but was carried on the breath of the shepherds and in the rhythmic tap of their staffs, as mobile and resilient as the people who cherished it. The very stone of the Dolomite Mountains seemed to hold a whisper of the old tongue. Here, where Italian and German pressures threatened to silence the Latin language, communities discovered that the landscape itself could be their greatest ally. They became the Dolomite echo choirs, turning the region's dramatic geology into a vast, covert classroom for their endangered mother tongue. Their practice grounds were chosen with the precision of master acousticians, utilizing natural stone amphitheaters and razor-thin valleys where sound could travel for miles, yet remain curiously contained within the specific contours of the rock. To an outsider, the distant sound of singing might seem like a trick of the wind, but within those echoing chambers, a detailed linguistic lesson was unfolding. Their songbook was a direct reflection of their Alpine existence. They perfected Alpine calling songs, those long, melodic shouts used to communicate across vast distances, but infused each one with dense Latin vocabulary. A call about an approaching storm was packed with specific terms for cloud formations and wind directions, while a chant for carving wood or building a hayloft became a practical glossary for traditional crafts. This ensured the language they preserved was not a relic, but a living tool, its words perfectly describing the world they inhabited every day. A simple work song about herding sheep up to the high pastures could secretly contain a complete lesson on the unique verb conjugations required for movement and direction in Latin. Their most stunning innovation, however, was the mastery of stone singing. Over generations, they learned exactly how to position their bodies and shape their voices to make the mountain rock sing with them. By targeting specific limestone cliffs and dolomite pillars known for their resonant qualities, they could produce haunting harmonic overtones. these ghostly additional notes, created by the interaction of their voices with the stone, were not just beautiful, they were functional. The singers learned to control these overtones to emphasize the specific phonetic sounds that made Ladin distinct from its neighboring tongues, drilling the precise pronunciation of difficult consonants and vowel shapes into the ears of every participant. This deep understanding of their environment evolved into a sophisticated system of valley communication. A choir in one village could send a message to another group several valleys away by singing a coded melody into a specific rock face at a predetermined time of day. The natural acoustics would carry the core of the song across the impossible distances, a melodic telegram that could relay news, warn of danger, or, most importantly, distribute new linguistic material. A new verse composed in a central village could be heard, memorized, and replicated by a distant choir within hours, all without a single person making the treacherous journey or a single incriminating word being written down. This geological approach to preservation shows us that a culture does not need to build fortresses when it can partner with the very earth beneath its feet, engineering a soundscape where every echo is an act of defiance. Where the Douro River carved its way through the Portuguese landscape, it also carved out a sanctuary for a forgotten sound. The Mirandese language, pushed to the margins by the dominance of Portuguese, found its voice once more in the rhythmic flow of the water itself. Communities of boatmen and riverside villagers formed clandestine choirs, turning the river into both their stage and their shield. Their practice sessions were dictated by the water's own logic, held on flat-bottomed boats in the very center of the current or within deep, echoing caves carved into the riverbank by centuries of erosion. They timed their gatherings with precision, waiting for the high waters of spring melt or the dense fog of autumn mornings, conditions that would swallow their harmonies before they could reach the ears of any official on shore. Their songbook was drawn from the very essence of their daily lives. They sang ancient nautical work songs for hauling nets and mending boats, and rhythmic chants for the olive and grape harvests from the steep terraced hills above. Each melody was saturated with pure Mirandese vocabulary, words for specific types of river currents, for local fish species, and for traditional farming tools. A chant about setting a weir trap was a covert lesson in nouns, while a song about the annual wine harvest secretly drilled the complex verb conjugations needed to describe a process. The true genius of their method, however, was their development of water rhythm. The singers learned to listen to the river's flow, using its ever-changing tempo as a natural metronome for their language practice. When the current was swift and strong after the rains, their songs would take on a driving, urgent pace. During the lazy, slow days of summer, when the water barely seemed to move, their melodies would stretch out, becoming languid and drawn out. This forced them to practice their Mirandese at different speeds, mastering the pronunciation and syntax under varying rhythmic pressures, ensuring the language remained fluid and adaptable in their minds. But the river was more than a metronome, it was their messenger. To coordinate their efforts across a wide, isolated region, the Douro singers created a unique postal service. They would place tiny, watertight containers, often just hollow reeds sealed with wax, into the current at a specific, pre-arranged time. Inside would be a new musical composition, its lyrics introducing fresh vocabulary or a new grammatical structure. A downstream choir, waiting at a designated bend in the river, would pluck these floating missives from the water. This fluvial network allowed a new song composed in one village to be sung in another dozens of miles away by the next evening, all without a single person ever leaving the safety of the river's embrace. This profound integration of culture and current shows how a community can weave its identity into the very landscape, ensuring that as long as the river flows, the memory of its song will never be washed away. The relentless clatter of 100 looms created a wall of sound inside the textile workshops of Willamoes. Here, where both Polish and German authorities had worked to silence the unique Wymasiraries tongue, the weavers forged a chorus from the very tools of their trade. Their industrial sanctuary was a masterpiece of camouflage, the deafening mechanical rhythm of the workshop perfectly masking the forbidden harmonies that preserved their mother tongue. These were not just workers, they were cryptographers, and their looms were instruments of both craft and cultural conspiracy. Their entire repertoire was built around the process of textile creation itself. They sang complex work songs that detailed every step, from carding the raw wool to the final intricate patterns of the finished cloth. Each song was a dense linguistic archive, its lyrics packed with the highly specialized vocabulary of weaving, all in flawless Wymasiraries. A rhythmic chant for operating the shuttle became a secret lesson in nouns for different thread types, while a melody about dyeing fabrics could covertly drill the unique verb conjugations needed to describe chemical processes. This ensured the language they saved was not an abstract idea, but a living lexicon intrinsically tied to their skilled hands and daily labor. Their most stunning innovation was a silent, visual language woven directly into the fabric. The weavers developed a brilliant code where the complex patterns they created on their looms, the specific interlacing of warp and weft, corresponded directly to musical notation. A particular sequence of colored threads might represent a melodic phrase, while a recurring geometric motif could encode a rhythmic pattern. A finished bolt of cloth to an outsider was simply a beautiful textile. But to the initiated, it was a stored symphony, a complete new composition in Wymasiraries that could be read from the pattern and sung back into existence, leaving no written evidence that could ever be confiscated. They even turned the physical act of weaving into a linguistic exercise. The weavers meticulously timed the specific movements of their looms to mirror grammatical structures. The forceful throw of the shuttle across the warp might coincide with a verb, while the gentle pull of the beater, pressing the new thread into place, could be timed to a noun's definite article. This kinesthetic learning connected the muscle memory of their craft to the syntactical rules of their language, weaving grammar into the very fiber of their being. And for the most delicate sounds, they created thread songs. In these sessions, different colors and textures of yarn were assigned to represent specific phonetic elements of Wymasiraries. A coarse red thread might signify a guttural consonant, while a smooth blue silk could represent a soft vowel sound. Learners would physically handle these yarns as they sang, creating a tactile, multi-sensory connection to the pronunciation, making the elusive sounds of their dying language something they could literally feel and hold. This profound fusion of industry and identity proves that a culture does not need to retreat to the wilderness to survive. Sometimes it can plant its flag right in the heart of a workshop, using the relentless noise of progress to hide the ancient, enduring sound of home. Beneath the sun-baked fields of Salento, the earth itself held a secret. While the Greco language, a unique Greek dialect surviving in southern Italy, faced relentless pressure, its defenders retreated into a world of stone and shadow. They transformed ancient underground olive presses, known as trapeti, and vast network of storage caves into clandestine concert halls. These subterranean spaces, cool and silent for most of the year, became the stage for a sophisticated linguistic conspiracy. To the outside world, their gatherings were always something else, a pious religious procession honoring a local saint or a boisterous agricultural festival celebrating the olive harvest. No official ever suspected that these vibrant public displays were merely the dress rehearsal for a far more important, hidden performance. Inside the caves, the real work began. Their songbook was a masterpiece of cultural fusion, built around haunting Byzantine-style chants. They preserved the ancient melodic structures but replaced the lyrics with dense Greco verses. These compositions were linguistic treasure maps, deliberately packed with vocabulary that showcased the dialect's unique position between two worlds. A single hymn might weave together pure Greek roots with loanwords from local Italian dialects, capturing the entire history of their people in a few flowing stanzas. This was not just preservation, it was a deliberate act of documenting a living, evolving identity. They became master architects of sound within their stone sanctuaries. Over time, the singers meticulously mapped the acoustics of each cave, identifying specific chambers that naturally amplified certain frequencies. A niche in the back might perfectly accentuate low, guttural consonants, while a domed ceiling could clarify the clarity of delicate vowel sounds. They would position singers strategically, using the cave's own voice to practice and perfect the most difficult phonetic combinations in Greco, turning the geology into their vocal coach. This ensured that every subtle pronunciation, every unique intonation that defined their mother tongue, was practiced with perfect precision. Membership in this secret society was a slow and solemn journey. A strict hierarchy governed the choirs, with advancement based entirely on linguistic mastery demonstrated through song. A new initiate might only be permitted to sing simple, repetitive refrains. To earn the right to sing a more complex verse, a member had to prove they understood the advanced grammar and rich vocabulary contained within it. The ultimate goal was to become a composer, one of the few trusted to craft new songs that would expand the living lexicon and introduce new grammatical challenges for the next generation. This system ensured that the most knowledgeable singers held the greatest responsibility, creating an unbroken chain of expertise passed down through melody. In the quiet darkness of the Trapeti, the Greco people did more than hide. They built a fortress for their language from the very stones their ancestors had carved. High in the Alpine reaches where Roman roads had long since replaced ancient trails, a whisper of the old world stubbornly clung to the thin air. The Cisalpine Gaulish revival singers were not just preserving a language, they were resurrecting it from fragments. Their practice grounds were the high pastures, in remote stone huts where the only witnesses were the circling eagles. Here, they faced a unique challenge. Their language had no living native speakers, its voice silenced for centuries. Their songbook was a patchwork, painstakingly reconstructed from ancient curse tablets, sparse inscriptions on weathered stones, and the Gaulish words that had been absorbed into Latin, like fossils preserved in stone. A simple pastoral call to herd sheep was not merely a signal, it was a daring act of linguistic archaeology, its melody built around a handful of verified verbs and nouns. Their entire endeavor was a beautiful gamble, an attempt to breathe life back into a tongue using little more than scholarly deduction and musical intuition. Their most vital tool was the landscape itself, engineered into a massive communication network they called peak communication. A singer standing on one windswept summit would sing out a phrase of reconstructed Gaulish. A listener on the next peak over, perhaps a mile away, would have to catch the melody and the words as they were carried and distorted by the wind. Their task was to reproduce the phrase with perfect phonetic accuracy before relaying it onward to the next peak. This created a living chain of repetition that stretched across the mountains, a real-time test of whether their reconstructed vocabulary and grammar could be clearly understood and replicated across a natural, challenging medium. If a word consistently failed to make the journey, it was sent back to the scholars for re-evaluation. This was preservation through performance, where the mountain passes became a brutal, unforgiving editor. They even built their own library of sound, understanding that their language had unique phonetic qualities lost to time. the singers became master instrument makers. They crafted simple flutes from specific types of alpine wood, each chosen for the way it could produce a tone that mimicked a particular Gaulish vowel sound. They filled leather bags with stones of different sizes and densities, creating rattles that replicated the consonant clusters found in their few surviving inscriptions. A learner would listen to the rattle's specific cadence, the clash of pebbles mimicking the rhythm of a forgotten word, and then try to reproduce that rhythm with their own voice. This multi-sensory approach gave abstract linguistic theory a tangible, audible form. The work of these Alpine revivalists stands as a profound testament to the enduring power of cultural memory. They prove that a language is never truly dead as long as there is a will to remember, and that the most ancient echoes can sometimes find their clearest voice when sung from the top of the world. Stone walls meant to keep invaders out became a sanctuary for a language fading from the streets. Along the Dalmatian coast, where Venetian and Slavic tongues dominated public life, the last speakers of the old Dalmatian language retreated into the very fortifications that defined their cities. They formed the city wall corrals, turning defensive architecture into an instrument of acoustic defiance. Their stages were the echoing gate passages beneath massive stone arches, the spiraling stairwells of watchtowers, and the long, vaulted casemates where cannons once stood. In these spaces, the physics of sound worked in their favor, amplifying their voices for each other while trapping the melodies within the labyrinth of stone, hiding their forbidden harmonies from the open piazzas just outside. Their songbook was a living record of a vanishing way of life. They sang maritime shanties for raising sails and unloading cargo, each verse packed with the unique Dalmatian words for specific ropes, winds, and harbor landmarks. Urban work songs for cobblers and stonemasons contained the specialized vocabulary of medieval commerce and craftsmanship, ensuring the language of the port and the workshop was never forgotten. A simple melody about mending a fishing net could secretly teach the complex grammatical cases used for describing tools and materials, while a chant for building a stone wall might embed the syntax for giving communal commands. The true genius of these singers was their mastery of wall singing. They discovered that by standing at precise angles to the curved stone surfaces, they could create powerful harmonic resonances. A singer facing a specific spot on a concave wall could produce a clear, ringing overtone that emphasized a particular vowel sound or consonant cluster unique to Dalmatian. They used this technique to drill the most difficult pronunciations, turning the city's fortifications into a vocal coach made of limestone and mortar. This allowed them to practice and perfect the subtle phonetic qualities that made their mother tongue distinct from the languages pressing in on all sides. They then wove the city itself into their memory. The Corrals developed a sophisticated mnemonic system using the urban landscape. They associated specific locations with different linguistic lessons. The main gate might be linked to the rules for verb conjugation, and singing near it would reinforce those patterns. A particular sheltered courtyard could be dedicated to vocabulary for family and home, while the steps leading down to the sea were reserved for practicing the grammatical cases used in navigation and trade. To learn the language, a member would take a mental walk through the city, each location unlocking a different part of the linguistic structure. This urban approach to preservation reveals a profound truth. A culture does not always need to flee to the wilderness to survive. It can embed itself into the cracks and crevices of its own history, using the monuments of its past to safeguard the sound of its future, ensuring that even in a bustling, modern city, the echoes of an ancient tongue can still be heard if you know where to listen. The final choir sang its resistance not in ancient caves, but in the cavernous ruins of industry. In the Picardy region of France, where the Picard language was being systematically silenced, textile workers refused to let their mother tongue become just another discarded relic. They formed clandestine harmonic societies, gathering in the vast, echoing spaces of abandoned mills and warehouses. These post-industrial cathedrals, with their broken windows and rusting machinery, became the unlikely fortresses for a final stand. The industrial acoustics of these spaces were their greatest asset. The high metal ceilings and hard, bare walls created a powerful, natural reverberation, a swirling echo chamber that amplified their voices into a thunderous chorus. Yet this sound was brilliantly contained, the thick brick walls and distance from any town ensuring the powerful harmonies were heard only by those standing within the decaying buildings, leaving no trace for the outside world. Their repertoire was a direct echo of their labor, built entirely around the work songs of the textile industry. Each melody was saturated with specialized Picard vocabulary, the precise words for different types of looms, for the intricate processes of dyeing cloth, and for the tools that had once filled the now silent halls. A rhythmic chant about operating a spinning jenny became a secret lesson in nouns, while a complex harmony describing the pattern of a weave could covertly drill the unique verb conjugations of their language. This ensured the lexicon they preserved was not an abstract collection of words, but the living language of their hands and their history. Their most stunning innovation was a system where the ghost of the machinery informed their music. They composed complex polyrhythms that directly mimicked the clatter and hum of the looms that had once dominated these spaces. One vocal line might follow the steady, percussive beat of the shuttle, while another wove a melody around the rhythmic clicking of the bobbins. These intricate, interlocking rhythms were not just for musical beauty, they were a coded language. Specific rhythmic patterns were assigned to represent different grammatical rules, turning the very structure of their songs into a hidden lesson in Picard syntax. To master the rhythm was to internalize the grammar. They then transformed the physical decay of the mills into an immersive classroom. The societies developed a system where different rooms, each with its own unique acoustic properties, were dedicated to different aspects of the language. The vast, open weaving shed with its long sonic decay was used for practicing epic ballads rich in narrative vocabulary. A small, tight office off the main floor, where sound was sharp and clear, became the room for drilling precise pronunciation and difficult consonant clusters. The cavernous basement, with its low, rumbling resonance, was reserved for learning the deep, guttural sounds that gave Picard its distinctive character. This architectural approach to learning created a journey through the language, each space reinforcing a different facet of their cultural knowledge. In these hollowed-out monuments to a bygone industrial age, the Picard workers performed a profound act of alchemy. They took the spaces of their own economic displacement and repurposed them into engines of cultural renewal. Their story is a powerful reminder that the tools for resistance are not always found in the wilderness or in sacred texts. Sometimes they are waiting in the silence of an abandoned factory, where the echo of a forgotten machine can be reborn as the sound of a people remembering who they are. From the hollowed-out mills of Picardy to the echoing valleys of the Dolomites, these 24 choirs created a shared blueprint for defiance. Though separated by vast distances and distinct cultures, their survival strategies converged in a stunning display of human ingenuity. They all discovered that music could be engineered into a precise tool for linguistic preservation, a tool built on a few powerful, universal principles. Nearly every choir perfected a form of coded communication, turning abstract grammar into something you could hear and feel. A specific musical interval, the distance between two notes, might be permanently assigned to represent a verb tense. A complex rhythmic pattern tapped out on an anvil or woven into a loom's clatter could correspond to the rules of sentence syntax. Harmonic structures, like the moment of convergence in a Frisian Marsh song, were designed to drill difficult phonetic sounds into memory. The music was never just a melody, it was a clandestine classroom where every note carried a hidden lesson. Their choice of sanctuary was another shared masterstroke. These communities looked at their world and saw not just landscape but acoustic architecture. They sought out spaces that offered natural concealment and enhanced sound. Caves, forests, and mine shafts swallowed their voices, while stone amphitheaters and alpine cliffs amplified them for the initiated alone. They learned to read the sonic properties of their environment as expertly as they read music, turning the very earth into a co-conspirator. None of this could have lasted without an unwavering commitment to secrecy. Elaborate protocols were the lifeblood of every operation. They communicated through silent languages of hand signals, hammer taps, and knotted ropes. They used fragments of approved prayers as passwords and specific bird calls as all-clear signals. A strict hierarchy of membership ensured that trust was earned gradually, with the most sensitive linguistic knowledge reserved for those who had proven their discretion through years of loyal participation. This created a human fortress around their precious cultural treasure. Perhaps the most profound commonality was their integration of language into the fabric of daily life. Preservation was not a separate scholarly exercise, it was woven into the rhythm of existence. For the Frisian Fishermen, the language lived in the call and response of hauling nets. For the Sorbian mothers, it was encoded in the lullabies sung at bedtime. For the Kashubian weavers, grammar was timed to the throw of a shuttle. By making their mother tongue essential to work, worship, and family, they ensured it remained a living, breathing force, not a relic to be pulled out on special occasions. This fusion of daily practice and musical emotion created an unbreakable bond. Music has a unique power to bypass the intellect and anchor itself directly in the heart. The joy of a harmonious chorus, the comfort of a familiar melody, the pride of a perfectly executed harmony, these emotional experiences cemented the language deep within the singers' souls. They were not just memorizing words, they were falling in love with the sound of their own identity. The legacy of these 24 choirs is a timeless lesson in resilience. They teach us that when a culture is pushed to the brink, its people will find astonishing ways to adapt, using the tools at hand to build a sanctuary for their heritage. Their story is not just a historical curiosity, it is a living manual for anyone fighting to keep a language alive today, proving that the most powerful acts of preservation often begin with a single, courageous note. Their songs became time capsules, patiently waiting in the dark for a future that could hear them again. When political winds finally shifted and the heavy pressure to assimilate eased, these preserved musical traditions did not fade away. They became the very bedrock of modern revival. The courageous work of those underground choirs had safeguarded a blueprint, a living record of sound and syntax that scholars and activists could now use to rebuild. In Wales, the powerful network of the Cymanfa Ganu, which had kept the language alive in four-part harmony, provided the cultural infrastructure and the passionate, fluent singers who would go on to demand and establish Welsh language schools, radio stations, and television channels in the 20th century. The music had nurtured not just a vocabulary, but an unbreakable sense of identity that was ready to step back into the light. Similarly, the secret repertoire of the Breton Nightingales, passed down through generations in star-lit stone circles, offered linguists a priceless treasure trove. These were not just old songs, they were detailed audio snapshots of regional dialects and grammatical structures that had otherwise been lost. This musical evidence became absolutely crucial for reconstructing a standardized form of Breton. giving a new generation a coherent and authentic foundation upon which to build. Today, technology has become a powerful new ally in this ancient fight. The very same melodies that were once confined to hidden caves and foggy marshes are now being digitized, archived in global databases, and analyzed with acoustic software. Researchers can study the subtle vocal ornamentation of a Sean-Nós singer to understand the precise pronunciation of a lost consonant, or map the rhythmic patterns of a Frisian shanty to decode its embedded grammatical rules. These digital archives ensure that the legacy of the 24 choirs will never be vulnerable to fire, decay, or political suppression again. Their voices, once a secret, now have a permanent home in the cloud, accessible to anyone with an internet connection and a desire to learn. This historical model of singing a language into survival is now inspiring a new wave of cultural activists. All over the world, contemporary choirs are forming with the explicit goal of teaching endangered languages to new speakers. They compose pop songs in Maori, arrange hip-hop verses in Navajo, and teach children's rhymes in Sami, using the same principle those medieval communities discovered, that melody makes memory stick. The underground choirs of the past proved that cultural preservation is not a hopeless task, even under the most brutal adversity. They offer a tangible, proven strategy for the thousands of languages currently teetering on the edge of extinction today. Their story is a lasting testament to the fact that resistance does not always require a shout, that the most enduring revolutions are sometimes the ones we choose to sing. These silent harmonies prove that a language is far more than a list of words. It is the vessel for an entire worldview, the living archive of a people's deepest values and unique way of seeing the world. When a language is saved, you preserve the specific jokes that only make sense in its cadence, the lullabies that have soothed generations, and the ancient stories that explain the stars. The 24 underground choirs were not just protecting grammar, they were safeguarding the very soul of their communities, ensuring that future generations would know not only what their ancestors said, but who they were. This legacy offers a powerful compass for our own era, where languages continue to vanish at an alarming rate. The ingenuity of those medieval singers challenges us to find our own modern equivalents of their secret harmonies. How can we use today's tools, from digital archives to social media, to become the choirs of the 21st century? Their story is an invitation to listen more closely to the fading voices around us and to recognize that every language holds a piece of the human puzzle. If this journey through hidden choirs has moved you, share your thoughts in the comments about which story resonated most, and subscribe to continue exploring the untold histories that shape our world.